Why does a black woman have to bleed before anyone believes she has power? Why do some officers act brave only when they think their victim is weak? Why do they always judge the skin first and the truth last? These questions floated in the air long before the courtroom doors opened that morning. The hall was full of cold eyes and loud whispers because everyone knew Officer Ryan Matthews was testifying in a minor assault case he claimed was routine. But no one knew what was about to happen when a quiet black woman stepped inside. Brianna Cole walked in slowly and calmly, her head slightly lowered, wearing simple clothes that made her look like just another citizen who got in the way of police authority, and Ryan immediately narrowed his eyes the moment he saw her, because in his world, any confident black woman was either a threat or a target. He stepped toward her, blocking the hallway even though she had said nothing, and the arrogance rose in his chest like smoke. He shoved her shoulder slightly and muttered something racist under his breath, loud enough for the people nearby to hear, but soft enough that he could pretend he didn't say it. Brianna didn't react. She simply continued walking toward the courtroom door. That made him furious. A black woman not bowing her head was enough to ignite his pride. He grabbed her arm hard, leaned close, and growled that she wasn't allowed near the witness bench without permission. She tried to gently pull away, asking him to let go, but he tightened his grip like a man trying to prove something to an invisible audience. When she tried again to move, he snapped. Ryan slammed her against the cold courtroom wall with full force, and the crack of impact made the entire hallway fall silent. Every head turned. Some people gasped. Others looked away, pretending they didn't see the racism happening right in front of them. Brianna's breath left her body for a moment as her back hit the wall, but she didn't scream. She didn't curse. She didn't even fight back. She simply stared at him with a calmness that made him more uncomfortable than any punch could have. Ryan yelled at her to stay where she was and threatened to arrest her, and the other officers didn't intervene because most of them had seen Ryan do worse and get away with it. He wiped his uniform sleeve as if her presence had stained it. Brianna looked at him one last time, an unreadable expression in her eyes, and then she spoke the softest sentence he had ever heard. A sentence that should have warned him. A sentence that should have made him stop. She whispered, "You will regret this." Then the courtroom doors opened, and Judge Eleanor Briggs stepped inside with her file in hand, preparing to make an announcement that would flip the entire room upside down. But Ryan still thought he was in control. He didn't know that in the next few minutes his world, his career, and his pride were about to shatter because the woman he slammed against the wall was not who he thought she was. She was far above him, higher than any badge he had ever worn, stronger than any authority he had ever abused. She was walking toward a destiny that he could not stop, and he had just assaulted his new boss without knowing it. If you respect strong women who rise above racism, comment the word respect. She was walking toward a destiny that he could not stop, and he had just assaulted his new boss without knowing it. And the moment Judge Eleanor Briggs stepped fully into the courtroom, the air shifted like a storm rolling in, because she held a sealed folder in her hand, and her expression carried the weight of something bigger than any normal hearing, and Brianna walked behind her silently, as if she owned the place, while Ryan stood frozen, suddenly unsure why the judge was looking directly at him with disappointment in her eyes, and the bystanders sensed something was wrong, but none of them dared speak, because the judge's voice carried the kind of authority that made even the loudest room fall quiet. And she called everyone to order before turning to the officers with a sharp stare that sliced straight through Ryan's fake confidence. And she asked why there was noise in the hallway moments earlier, and why a complaint had just been placed on her desk about excessive force used inside the courthouse, and Ryan opened his mouth to lie because lying was easy when the victim was a black woman. But before he could speak, Brianna stepped forward and said calmly that there was no need to repeat the scene, because everyone saw it, and Ryan's face turned red as he barked that she was exaggerating. But the judge raised her hand, telling him to remain silent, because the time for excuses was over. And then she announced that today's hearing was special, because they would not only discuss the minor case on the calendar, but also introduce someone who would change the entire police department starting today. And the officers exchanged confused looks, while Ryan felt a strange pressure in his chest, as if something dark was crawling toward him, and the judge opened the sealed folder slowly like a punishment delivered in slow motion, revealing a formal document signed by the mayor and the governor, and she read the title aloud, and said the words that made Ryan's knees weaken, because the document officially named Brianna Cole the new chief of police. Effective this morning, and the room exploded with whispers as everyone realized the black woman he slammed against the wall wasn't a random citizen, but the new leader of the entire force, and Ryan felt his throat close as Brianna stepped forward with the confidence of a woman who had survived worse than him, and she looked him in the eyes and said that she didn't need revenge, because truth always exposed itself at the perfect time, and he tried to apologize, but it sounded hollow, like a man begging to keep. The power slipping through his fingers, and the judge made it worse by reminding him loudly that assaulting a superior officer carried consequences far beyond suspension, and Ryan dropped his gaze for the first time in years, because he finally understood that racism had led him straight into the one trap he could never escape, and Brianna didn't raise her voice and didn't threaten him. She simply told him that leadership demanded respect and justice, and that his actions would be dealt with properly because the department deserved better than officers who attacked innocent women out of pride and fear, and the courtroom watched in silence as Ryan swallowed his pride, realizing that the world had just changed, and Brianna was now the force he could never intimidate again. If you believe justice always wins, comment the word respect. Officer Ryan Matthews stood frozen as Judge Eleanor Briggs' voice echoed through the courtroom like a hammer striking metal. The room had gone deadly still. Every officer, every clerk, every spectator, all staring at the woman he had slammed against a wall only hours ago. And now she stood there with quiet power, unshaken, unbroken, her badge glinting under the courtroom lights like a silent warning. Chief Brianna Cole, the new leader of the entire department, and the woman whose dignity he tried to crush. Ryan's breath hitched in his throat as Brianna took one slow, controlled step forward, her eyes locked onto his. Gone was the soft-spoken woman he mocked in the hallway. Standing before him was a chief built from storms and strength. She didn't shout, she didn't curse. She didn't tremble, she simply existed with a presence so powerful the air felt heavier. Ryan's mind raced. Images of what he had done to her flashed like lightning, how he yanked her arm, how he pushed her, how he told her she should learn her place. And now he finally understood. The place he thought she belonged was the one he feared most. Above him, leading him, commanding him. Judge Briggs cleared her throat, her voice sharp. Officer Matthews stepped forward. His legs felt like cement. He moved reluctantly. The crowd watched him like he was a criminal walking toward judgment. Brianna didn't blink, didn't step back, didn't give him a single inch of comfort. Judge Briggs continued. This department has a new chief, a black woman, a capable leader, a victim of your abuse this morning. Ryan's jaw tightened. Sweat dripped down his neck. He had always believed no black woman could ever outrank him. That belief was now shattering under the weight of the courtroom lights. Judge Briggs turned to Brianna. Chief Cole, do you wish to make a statement before this court decides disciplinary action? Brianna inhaled deeply, then stepped forward, her voice smooth, steady, painfully calm. Yes, Your Honor. Every eye in the room followed her. Even the walls seemed to listen. Ryan Matthews, she said softly, you didn't break me when you shoved me against that wall. You didn't scare me when you screamed in my face. You didn't silence me when you twisted my arm like I didn't belong. But you showed me one thing. You are exactly why this department needed a new chief. Ryan flinched. Each word hit him harder than a punch. Brianna continued, I didn't come here to ruin your life. I came here to change a system that people like you have poisoned for years. Her voice didn't shake, not once. She paused, letting the silence deepen. But understand this. The wall you slammed me into this morning. That wall became the reason I will never let another officer treat a black woman the way you treated me. Ryan's throat burned. The courtroom murmured. For the first time he felt something he had never felt before. Shame, real shame. The kind that crawls into your bones. Judge Briggs nodded slowly. Very well, Chief Cole. Then she turned to Ryan. Officer Ryan Matthews, you are hereby suspended pending investigation for excessive force, abuse of authority, and racial misconduct. Ryan's eyes widened. His body stiffened. His career, his pride, his so-called power, all slipping away. Brianna didn't smile, she didn't celebrate, she simply stood tall, her strength radiating like quiet thunder. It was over for him. Court officers approached, placing hands on Ryan's shoulders. He looked at Brianna one last time, and he saw it, not anger, not revenge, but disappointment, the kind that cut deeper than any punishment. As he was escorted out, the courtroom erupted in whispers, some shocked, some relieved, some inspired. Brianna exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of every black woman who had ever been told she didn't belong. Today she stood for them, today she won for them. She turned to leave, but Judge Briggs called out gently, Chief Cole. Brianna paused. The judge smiled softly. This city just gained a leader it desperately needed. Brianna nodded, humbled. Her journey had just begun. and outside the courthouse people waited, some curious, some hopeful. Some finally ready to believe in change. She pushed the doors open, sunlight washing over her. For the first time in years she felt free, strong, unstoppable, and as she stepped down the courthouse stairs she whispered under her breath, "Let them know a new chief has arrived." If you felt her strength, remember your support writes the next chapter. Leave a powerful comment for Chief Brianna Cole and don't forget to subscribe for the next story. Sunlight spilled across the courthouse steps as Chief Brianna Cole stood tall, letting the warmth settle over her skin like a quiet victory. The whispers behind her had already turned into conversations, the conversations were becoming voices, and the voices were slowly becoming a movement. She walked down the steps with the calm of a woman who had survived storms far bigger than Officer Ryan Matthews. What he did to her was cruel, painful, humiliating, but today proved something he never expected. She was built from a strength he couldn't break. Reporters rushed toward her, cameras flashing, microphones raised, hands reaching out. Chief Cole, what happened inside? Chief Cole, what will happen to Officer Matthews? Chief Cole, what comes next? Brianna lifted one hand gently and the entire crowd fell silent. Her presence alone demanded respect. Her voice remained steady. Today was not about revenge. Today was about accountability. Today this city took the first step toward justice, and every woman, every black woman especially, deserves to walk these streets without fear of those sworn to protect them. The crowd murmured with awe. Some clapped. Some wiped tears. Even officers standing by lowered their eyes in respect. Across the plaza, hidden in the shade, Officer Ryan Matthews sat alone on a bench, his suspension papers in hand. His world had collapsed in a matter of hours. He looked at Brianna from a distance, guilt slicing through him like a blade. For the first time, he understood the weight of his actions, the harm, the racism, the cruelty he had normalized for years. He whispered to himself brokenly, "I did this. I did all of this." Judge Eleanor Briggs stepped outside, her robe swaying slightly in the breeze. She approached Brianna with a soft, supportive smile. "Chief Cole, you handled today with more grace than this city deserves." Brianna exhaled deeply, her eyes reflecting both exhaustion and triumph. "Thank you, Your Honor, but this is only the beginning." The judge nodded knowingly. Change always begins with one person brave enough to stand. Brianna turned her gaze toward the city, tall buildings, cars, honking, people crossing streets, living their ordinary lives, unaware that a new chapter had begun. For years, communities had cried out for fairness, for safety, for a justice system that saw them as human. Today, Brianna felt the weight of their stories on her shoulders, and she welcomed it. This was her purpose. She had survived racism, doubt, humiliation, and violence. She had risen from victim to leader, from being shoved against a wall to standing above that very system. She closed her eyes, letting the moment settle in. Behind her, footsteps approached. Ryan Matthews slowly walked forward, escorted but not handcuffed, his pride shattered. He cleared his throat. "Chief Cole." Brianna turned, her expression calm, controlled, unreadable. Ryan swallowed hard, his voice trembling. "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it, but I want to say something." The plaza grew silent again. Even the wind seemed to pause. Ryan continued, "I thought strength looked like power, control, dominance. But today I saw real strength, and it was you." Every word cut him, but he forced himself to face it. "I was wrong about everything." The city stared, officers stared, Brianna stared. Then she spoke with calm finality. "Officer Matthews, accountability doesn't end with an apology, it begins with it." Ryan lowered his eyes, ashamed. She stepped closer, not threatening but firm. "You can change, but change requires truth, and today you finally spoke it." Ryan nodded, tears stinging his eyes. "For the first time in years," he whispered, "I will do better if they let me." Brianna didn't promise him anything, but she didn't dismiss him either. Growth wasn't instant, justice wasn't simple, but today something shifted. She turned back to the crowd. A little girl in the front row smiled up at her, eyes full of admiration. "Mama, that's the chief who stood up to the bad cop, right?" The girl's mother nodded, tears in her eyes. Brianna knelt, gently meeting the child's gaze. "Always remember this. No one can push you into a wall strong enough to stop you." The girl grinned wide. "I want to be like you when I grow up." Brianna felt her heart swell. This was why she fought, not for revenge, for the generations who needed to see a black woman rise. She stood, turning once more to face the entire plaza, her voice ringing out bold and unshaken. "This department will change. This city will change. And I will lead that change." The crowd erupted in applause, cheers echoing through the streets. For the first time, the city didn't just see a black woman. They saw a chief, a leader, a force. And as Brianna walked toward her car, Judge Briggs whispered proudly behind her, "History just met its new author." The door closed. Brianna sat inside, the silence wrapping around her like peace. A new chief, a new chapter, a new future, and the whole city finally knew her name. If you felt her power, drop a strong comment for Chief Brianna Cole and hit subscribe to support more stories that speak truth and courage.